And now to talk about our module of the week, let's turn it over to Martin, a principal solutions engineer at Acquia and a maintainer of a number of Drupal modules and recipes of his own. Martin, what do you have for us this week?
Thanks, Nick. Have you ever wanted to explore the AI capabilities of Drupal but didn't know where to start? There's a Drupal recipe for that. It's called AI Ecosystem Recipe, and it was created in October of 2024 by today's guest, Marcus Johansson of Freely Give. It has a 1.0.0 Alpha 2 release available, which requires Drupal 10.3 or newer, and because it's a recipe, it doesn't really have sort of all of the same qualifying metrics that we usually talk about. So it does seem to be actively maintained. It does have two open issues, both of which are bugs, but we don't really have any usage data at the moment. Now, when you require and apply this recipe on your Drupal site, you'll be able to start working with a variety of LLMs and specialized AI based services. You'll be able to do things like ingest unstructured content and map it to structured fields automatically, or generate a detailed SEO analysis of your nodes. There are multiple translation tools, crawler to help work across entire sites, and more. Now, this recipe is something you would probably want to apply to a sandbox site to understand the various ways to achieve something specific with AI and Drupal, and then apply whatever is best for your particular use case to your actual site build. But it's a useful resource for Drupalists wanting to start exploring some of the growing list of options for working with AI, or someone familiar with AI tools who wants to start using them with Drupal. So let's talk about AI ecosystem recipe. And Marcus, maybe you can kick things off by telling us about what inspired you to create this.
Yeah, so basically the idea behind it was that AI was moving so fast. We were adding so many providers. There was so many people contributing to the system that was actually where it is actually hard to keep track on what you can do with the AI module. So the idea was basically, hey, let's take everything that we know exists and put it into a recipe and try to keep this updated. We haven't kept it that updated, to be honest, but the idea is that we're gonna continue working on this, updating it, and basically, as you say, it gives you a sandbox. You download it on your sandbox, and you can start testing around everything that exists around AI. What providers exist? What kind of functionality can you solve with this, and so on.
Hmm.
I'm super interested in the unstructured content to structured content mapping. I think that's pretty interesting. I'm gonna definitely at some point this week try this out. I'm just wondering. So recipes are kind of like, apply once and keep carry on, go down the path yourself. I wonder, I mean, obviously you can reapply it, but I wonder what that looks like for future updates of it. Any thoughts on that, Martin or Marcus?
So I would say, to the extent that a newer version of a recipe might add, let's say, additional modules, then sort of, running composer updates, depending on whether or not the recipe was unpacked, if you got sort of those additional modules and then the configuration for them, then reapplying the recipe could give you sort of additional features. But yeah, to me, unpacking might be the complicating factor in that scenario.
It, I would say in general, recipes are not meant to be reapplied. By
Yeah,
default,
it's
they
fair.
will they will blow up because they unless they use config actions for every single one to provide it. If this already exists, don't create it, then or update it, it will blow up. Most recipes don't. It's a lot of extra work generally to make them so you can reapply them.
I mean,
Yeah.
there is that concept of item potency, which is
Yeah.
exactly that a recipe should be something you can reapply. But I agree, it does require sort of changing your approach if you want that to be something that will actually work in practice, particularly as the recipe might change over time.
Yeah, so I would say in this case, it's mostly for developers to try it
Yeah.
around, which means that if you actually want to try it in half a year, you should probably set up a new sandbox environment if it has updated and install it again.
That's kinda where I was getting to in my head. I was kinda like, "Oh, well, you could just, like, ditch your sandbox and reinstall it every time you wanna try an AI thingamajigger," right? So, like, I mean, I think that's totally reasonable. I was just curious. I'm, I'm super interested in giving this a whirl, as you know, their that list of features is super interesting to me, especially the translation piece of it too. I think that's kind of interesting. Or the SEO analysis. I mean, there are so many interesting pieces. I just gotta you gotta get in there and try it out.
I would say on top of this, actually, especially 1x Internet has been working really hard the last couple of weeks to create production ready recipes to use on your website.
Okay.
So if you look in the AI initiatives issue queue, you would be able to find issues for these that links to the actual recipes. So some of the things that this recipe sets up for you in a development fashion, we actually have solved in a production fashion.
So that's awesome. I feel like more recipes, making these things easier to configure and set up is important. One question, when Martin was describing this, he said, obviously it's a sandbox recipe, you install it, you play with it, you can kind of figure out how these things are built. Is there good documentation to kinda tell you how these things are built? Because I feel like once you get this recipe installed, you're gonna be like, "Oh, I really wanna reapply, like, to my own site, the SEO analysis," and then you gotta kinda, like, dig through to figure out what modules were installed and, how does that I mean, other than, I guess, you could go look at the recipe files to say, like, here are the modules that it installed and the configuration steps that it did, but, is there another way you can kinda, I don't know, dissect what this is doing once you kind of say, "Hey, I wanna move this feature over?"
Yeah, so the recipe itself is actually very vanilla. It mostly
Yeah.
installs modules for you and doesn't do any specific setups. So in the SEO example, if I remember correct, this is an actual module that just kind of works out of the box by
Mm,
installing it. So there aren't any necessarily any extra steps. But when it comes to documentation, that is of course depending on the module that you're trying out, how well that is documented. For the AI core and the modules that we maintain, we try to document it as well as possible. But there are of course contrib modules that might not have ample documentation.
Hmm.
makes sense.
Well, thank you, Martin. As always, you found another on topic module of the week, and I know you're sticking around for the show this week, but if listeners wanted to suggest a module of the week or chat, what's the best way for them to do that?
We're always happy to have conversations about modules of the week in the Talking Drupal channel of Drupal Slack, or folks can find me directly as ManClue on all of the Drupal and social channels. And by the time this comes out, I will also be at DrupalCon Nera. So if any of our listeners happen to be there, by all means, stop by and say hello. It would be great to interact with people face to face as well.
Martin, how long of a flight is that for you?
The main flight is going to be 14 hours.
Man, this guy really loves Drupal.